The sun was setting over Privet Drive, casting long shadows over number 4. Harry Potter sat at the small wooden table in the kitchen, carefully eating his dinner in the way he had learned to do over the years, quickly, quietly, without drawing attention. The Dursleys were still in the middle of one of their daily rants, with Uncle Vernon loudly complaining about something trivial and Aunt Petunia serving up plates of overcooked food. Harry had long since stopped trying to argue. They'd made it clear early on that there was no room for anything but obedience and silence in this house. It wasn't that Harry wanted to leave. It was that he had to. He had been planning to run away for weeks now. He was 14, and every day at number 4 felt like another reminder of just how little they cared for him. If the Dursleys weren't treating him like a servant, they were ignoring him completely as if he didn't exist. Their son, Dudley, was the center of their world, and Harry was just the oddity they reluctantly put up with. They kept him locked away under the stairs, a shadow in their bright, perfect world. Yet Harry's only escape was the occasional adventure in his mind, where he imagined a life far away from the Dursleys, somewhere he could be himself, without the fear of being judged for every little thing. But for now, he was stuck, forced to endure their insults, their smothering love for Dudley, and the way they watched him like a hawk every time he so much as looked at a book. Then, it happened. It started with the letter. At first, Harry thought it was just another piece of junk mail, but then he noticed the address written in curly, elegant letters. Harry Potter. The cupboard under the stairs, number 4, Privet Drive, Little Whinging, Surrey. It was his name, his real name. Not the name the Dursleys gave him, but the name they tried to forget. The name they worked so hard to bury. Harry stared at the letter, puzzled. What was it? Who could possibly be sending him something? Before he could open it, Uncle Vernon barged in, snatching the envelope from his hands.
What's this nonsense?
He bellowed, tearing it open before Harry could say a word. But all he found inside was a simple sheet of paper, and his expression turned to one of confusion, then frustration.
Nothing.
Vernon grumbled.
Just another one of your tricks. No more mail for you.
He slammed the door shut, locking it behind him. Harry stood frozen for a moment, unsure of what just happened. But that wasn't the end of it. Over the next few days, more letters arrived, an entire stack of them. The Dursleys made it their mission to make sure Harry never got one. They sealed up the mail slot, boarded up the windows, and locked the doors. But the letters kept coming, slipping under cracks, wedging themselves into the seams of the walls, until there were so many that they had to start hiding them away in secret places. But despite their efforts, Harry couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. It wasn't long before Harry grew suspicious. Every day more letters arrived. Each time he went to get one, it was snatched away by the Dursleys, who acted as if Harry had committed some great crime simply by receiving mail. Why were they acting like this? Why did they care so much? What could be so important in those letters? One Sunday, after the mail arrived in a frenzy, the house seemed to explode with the sound of paper. The letters were everywhere, fluttering from the cracks in the door, spilling out from behind the curtains, jammed under the floorboards. Harry couldn't believe his eyes. The letters were coming from everywhere, and the Dursleys couldn't stop it. For the first time, Harry smiled. He rushed to the door, grabbed a handful of the letters from the floor, and slammed the door behind him. He locked it tight, not trusting the Dursleys to come barging in again. "I'm not a Dumbo," he muttered under his breath, eyeing the sky. "I'm not going to try and catch a flying one." Before he could even take a proper look at the letters, there was a knock at the door, followed by the sounds of the Dursleys shouting. The door burst open and Uncle Vernon stormed in, his face purple with rage.
You're not going anywhere,
he shouted. He grabbed the letters out of Harry's hands, crumpled them, and tossed them in the sea-fire.
These are nonsense. Nothing more than trickery.
But Harry could only watch as the letters were burned, the fire dancing as if it knew the secrets they held. He had no idea what the letters meant, but he couldn't help but feel a strange pull toward them. This was something bigger than he could understand. The next morning, the Dursleys went a step further. They packed up their things and headed for the coast. They decided to go on the run, taking Harry with them as if he were some sort of unwanted baggage. They headed to a shack in the middle of nowhere, isolated from the world. No one would find them there, they thought. But Harry didn't care anymore. It was then that he met Hagrid. Hagrid burst through the door like a force of nature, making the little shack seem even smaller. His enormous frame took up most of the space, and he seemed completely unfazed by the Dursleys' shocked expressions. Without a word, he reached down, grabbed Harry by the shoulders, and lifted him off the ground as if he were weightless.
Harry Potter,
Hagrid boomed.
you're a wizard.
Right, Harry said, not even attempting to hide his sarcasm. And you're a giant, right? He blinked, his mind still trying to process everything. As Hagrid's booming laugh was enough to make the shack shake.
I am. But the important thing, lad, is that you're a wizard.
He handed Harry a thick envelope, much like the one the Dursleys had burned.
This letter's for ye. It's time ye learned about the wizarding world.
Harry stared at the letter, still skeptical. But in that moment, he realized that whatever was in that letter had to be better than his current life. The Dursleys were awful, and at this point, he had nothing left to lose. If it was true, if he was a wizard, maybe it would explain everything. Maybe this was his chance to escape. Without a word, he took the letter from Hagrid, breaking the seal. As he opened it, he saw the words, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, printed in elegant letters. Harry's heart skipped a beat. Well, if this is true, Harry muttered, it's better than my plan to run away. He looked at Hagrid. Let's go, but, before we do, what's the deal with the cake? The giant man grinned.
Cake, lad, it's for the journey.
As they traveled to Diagon Alley, Harry had 1,000 questions. What about my parents? Why didn't they come for me? He asked. How come no one ever told me about magic? And what's this about me being the boy who lived? Hagrid answered everything he could, but some things were better left unsaid. The questions about his parents lingered, but Hagrid only smiled mysteriously and avoided them when he could. When they arrived at Ollivander's to get Harry's wand, he was struck by how strange it felt to be in a world that seemed both familiar and completely foreign. The wand maker, Mr. Ollivander, gave Harry a look that made him shiver before handing him a long, thin wand that seemed to hum with power. This one chose you, Harry, Ollivander said, his voice almost reverent. Curious, though. It's the twin of another wand. The wand of a very powerful wizard, indeed. Harry frowned, already wondering what that meant. But before he could ask more, Hagrid shushed him, his finger to his lips.
Some things are better left unsaid,
he said quietly. Later, Harry picked out an owl, one that caught his attention, a sleek brown creature with a sharp gaze. As he packed his essentials, he felt a strange sense of purpose. He was leaving the Dursleys behind. He was about to begin a new chapter of his life. Once everything was packed, Hagrid led him back to the Muggle world, where Harry was still trying to make sense of everything. What did you take from the vault, Hagrid? Harry asked curiously, but again Hagrid shushed him.
Well, I'm not sure I'm supposed to tell you that yet,
Hagrid said, his eyes twinkling.
but you'll learn soon enough.
At the King's Cross station, Hagrid handed Harry a ticket. As Harry looked at it, he couldn't help but make a sarcastic remark. Platform 934. Really? And how am I supposed to get through that wall? He looked up at Hagrid, who was already walking away.
Just trust me, Harry.
Hagrid said, turning around with a wink. Harry stood there, staring at the wall. Yeah, sure, he muttered. Like that's going to work. He scanned the platform, searching for a sign of where he was supposed to go. Suddenly, a loud voice interrupted his thoughts. A woman, standing with her children, was speaking in an even louder voice than Hagrid had.
We're going to platform 934, children,
She shouted, as if announcing it to the entire station. Harry frowned. Yeah, hush hush about the wizarding world, Harry muttered sarcastically, watching as the woman rambled on. Real discreet. But before he could go any further, the woman turned to him, smiling brightly.
Oh, are you headed to Hogwarts as well?
She asked, her hand on his shoulder. Harry just nodded, barely listening. Right. Yeah. As she continued to speak, Harry's patience wore thin. But, hey, help was help. Maybe she could point him in the right direction. Finally, Harry spotted the sign with the markings, Platform 934, and walked toward it. He had no idea how it worked, but he was about to find out. Well, Harry muttered under his breath, this is going to be interesting. And with that, he stepped toward the wall, ready to see where this strange new world would take him.